Is there any anger in you? Any anger in your
Of course
work?
there is. Yeah, of course there is.
Talk about that. Tell me what the anger is. What are you angry about?
I don't remember.
Do you indulge in any form of worship? Life. I love life very much indeed.
The art life is a great life. It's coffee and cigarettes, maybe some red wine. It's catching ideas and translating them to one medium or another.
I try to frame in terms of what I want to include. I don't think about pictures when I'm photographing. I see life.
And the magic of this, over a lifetime, over 30 years of doing this, is that you start to see that my experiences, me, Ethan, is not nearly as unique as I thought. I have so much in common with all these people. And so they have something in common with me. You start to see how connected we all are.
Everybody's curious. I mean, basically, I'm photographing my own curiosity. What I'm curious about is what I take pictures of. And I don't know what I'm curious about until I get a photograph.
I didn't feel I needed to know any more than I knew, because I was reporting what they were doing. It wasn't about me. I want to get out of my own way, because what I think doesn't matter. What I'm doing is their story. I'm not doing my story.
The way I would put it is I get totally out of myself, damn near. I mean, it's the closest I come to not existing, I think.
Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society.
Be open to experience, be willing to try new things, don't have a rigid plan, accept random acts of hospitality without judgment or fear. The world is filled with people doing the best they can, you know?
Most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about poetry, right? They have a life to live, and they're not really that concerned with Allen Ginsberg's poems or anybody's poems until their father dies. They go to a funeral, you lose a child, somebody breaks your heart, they don't love you anymore. And all of a sudden, you're desperate for making sense out of this life. And has anybody ever felt this bad before? How did they come out of this cloud? Or the inverse, something great. You meet somebody and your heart explodes. You love them so much you can't even see straight. You know, you're dizzy. Did anybody feel like this before? What is happening to me? And that's when art's not a luxury, it's actually sustenance. We need it.
I guess it's all about communication in some ways. How do you communicate those deepermost feelings that are probably fairly hard to articulate?
This is a shelf that's been sitting here for 2 weeks now. I haven't put it up yet. I'm trying to find room for it. This is it. It's really important for me to be able to see everything out in front of me. I'm a very visual person, so I needed my own space. Got Yusuf Karsh and Fred Herzog, some of my own work, Vivian, Edward Hopper, Edward Bertinsky, and Joel Meyerowitz is up here somewhere. And then there's more over here. Robert Frank, David LaChapelle, and books. These have seemed to find their way over here instead of in the closet. There's too much to put in the closet for now. My girlfriend is not happy about it being on the floor. I'm sorry, Sophie. Speaking of which, that's Sophie's desk. You can show Sophie's desk. We work in the same space. She's got her ties over here, and that's her space, and this is mine. I have my cameras on my desk at all times, basically. That's what that shelf is for. Eventually, we'll see if that happens. And then these are some of my older cameras that I used to use. This was a replica of my first camera that I got when I was 6 years old. And then This was my first camera. This is my Nikon Coolpix. It still works, but the battery's out. What else? This is my guidebook. I recently started mentoring a 13-year-old photography student, and I've been teaching him photography now for the past 2 weeks. And this is his assessment, and then this is my kind of like social media plan, my framework. This is the space. I guess let's begin. I feel like I could use a cigarette.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a cigarette first, if you don't mind.
No.
In some ways, the photographs have always been about the people within the frame, the circumstances in which I catch them in, but I can't help but feel as if there are certain connections drawn to my life and their life. I think that's kind of the whole point, is to be able to see the connections between all of us. You know, I see a lot of myself in most people that I pass by on a day-to-day basis, but that doesn't mean that I'm photographing them because they remind me of me. It's more so just something that I find interesting and something that I find worth documenting. I thought that art was only painting, really, just because my mother is a painter, and so that was kind of like my introduction into the art world is painting and drawing, and that's what I viewed as what art could be. It wasn't until I got a little bit older that I started to view photography as some form of art that could be appreciated on the same level in terms of craftsmanship as painting could or drawing could, or, you know, sculpting or something like that. I still have a hard time sometimes thinking that photography is artwork per se, just because it's a drastically different medium than painting and drawing and everything like that. But I think that I believe more so now than ever that photography is a legitimate form of art and a necessary form of art. I feel as if you have to be a little bit more tasteful when it comes to, you know, making an art photograph compared to a painting. That the standards are a little bit different, but it's still art nonetheless. I have a habit of thinking far too much and far too often about things that I'm not able to communicate, and I think very deeply about human connection and the lack thereof, that human connection. And sometimes I feel as if that the words that I wish that I could speak to somebody just doesn't come across in the way that photographs can. You know, sometimes you just need to be able to show people what you're thinking rather than trying to communicate that verbally. So in a way, photography has given me a type of visual language that's allowed me to kind of bridge that gap and be more open about what I'm thinking, you know, open about what matters to me. And if I can get that point across through a photograph, then I feel as if I've like I've done my job. I think that the type of work that I do has more of a responsibility than just about any other form of artwork that I could think of, just because when I think about any other form of artwork, it's so subjective. Not to say that photography isn't subjective, but specifically the type of work that I do carries a certain amount of ethical responsibility to the moment that you're in. And of course, you can't help but have your own real-world experiences bleed into your work as an artist. That's inevitable, but you have to maintain a certain level of truthfulness when you're doing the type of work that I do. You know, I'd like to always be true to the moment, and if those boundaries cross, then they cross. But it's never my intention to only live through my own experience. You know, I feel like if you live through your own experience, it doesn't really make for great artwork. You have to be able to understand other people and the experiences that they go through. Everything. Without them, there is no photograph. There's no moment, there's no reconciliation. I can't do my job without other people. It's a very collaborative sort of environment that I live in. These people don't always know that they are collaborating in a part of my life, but I'm very keen to the fact that they are everything to me within that specific moment that the shutter snaps. I have a lot of appreciation for the people that I photograph. You know, because it's kind of like taking a bit of them, a piece of them, and carrying it with me. And it's never my goal to take a piece of them like I'm attacking them. It all comes from a place of wanting to understand and seeing something that I think matters in that moment. I feel like the easy route is to say that these are very divided times, and that I feel as if that's very apparent throughout a lot of the protest work that I do. But I think that, if anything, most people are just trying to do the best that they can. I don't think that you'll look back on some of my work and feel as if I was being pessimistic about the future, because I am very hopeful about the future. And my general demeanor about people is that most people are good people, or at least they want to be good people. And so I hope that you see, you know, years and years from now, looking back, that not only were there things that were devastating about living in this time period, especially here in the city, the lack of care for one another and the circumstances that unfortunately many people live in, but also the fact that even though those circumstances exist, there are equally an amount of people that care about one another. And that this is still a time period of love and of kindness and wonder. And even though things feel as if we're so separated from life around us, there are still those moments in which people find that connection and are able to kind of bridge that gap between social life and how do I say that word? Algorithmic life. I hardly feel anything, and that's not to be non-appreciative. It's just that's how I've always been. All of the things that I've done thus far have been what feels like out of necessity, just because of the circumstances that I grew up in and the way that I view things. It's very hard for me to feel accomplished about anything, really. It's very hard for me to feel successful in things for more than 5 seconds or 5 minutes. And it comes in waves, but I'm just always hungry for the next thing. I feel like there's never a resting point, and there never really has been. So I don't know how to answer that question, truthfully. I don't know the parameters in which I define success. I don't know if I ever will feel that way, but I'd like to. But it also doesn't necessarily always concern me. If somebody else thinks that I'm successful, it's about what I feel, so maybe I'll get there. Maybe when I was younger, I felt pressure to perform, but since my frontal lobe has developed, I don't have any expectations for myself as it pertains to an audience, you know? I don't create content or social media posts for the enjoyment of other people in hopes that they find me amusing or, you know, entertaining or anything like that. I try to bring the same level of authenticity. I hate that word, authenticity. It's like a new trend to call yourself authentic. I think that I'm just trying to be as true to myself and who I am as a person and my character and my personality, and be of use. I feel like a lot of this time that I'm scrolling social media, I wish that people were more useful, and that might be kind of harsh to say, but I just want to be useful. I want to provide people with a new way of thinking, of a new way of being, and if I can help just one person do that. I think I've been saying this since I was like 16 years old.
It's kind of weird, and I'm very excited to, hopefully I can teach some people something. That's ultimately my biggest goal, is to just teach people how to be themselves, just developing your own style.
If I can just help one person do that, then I feel accomplished. Maybe that's when I feel successful, is when I get a DM or I've gotten emails from people that reach out to me and say that the lessons that I've been teaching have been helpful in their own development. I think that that's probably when I feel the most successful. But in terms of having this need to validate myself or perform for social media, it hasn't crossed my mind since maybe 10 years ago. That's a tough question, because professionally in photojournalism, I feel as if a lot of the photojournalism that I see nowadays is not anywhere near up to par with the greats that I grew up studying. When you used to look at a photojournalistic image, I feel like it used to make you feel something because it wasn't so in your face all the time. Obviously there were, you know, your standard shots, but in terms of like the photojournalistic story, a couple page spread, you know, one that was published in Life magazine or something like that. Photographers took their time with, you know, obviously there were deadlines, but photographers told their stories in much more almost grandiose and magnificent ways where the photographs felt more impactful. Now when I think about photojournalism, I just think about front-facing images that are posted up on publication social medias and are swiped past within 2 or 3 seconds. And I feel like it kind of paints a broad picture of what's actually happening rather than finding the moments that kind of tell the story a little bit better. And so in terms of the type of work that I make, you know, I stick around for a long time, and I try and do my best to see things in a different way that show kind of like that human connection again in these moments, or the lack of human connection within these moments. It's not so much about what's happening, but more so about the people within that moment, and how that affects the overall story. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't think that New York has ever made an artist. I think that it's revealed an artist. I think that you come here and you learn new experiences, but it forces you to reveal your true character, which is why I feel like so many people end up leaving, is because they don't like who they are in the city. They have a certain expectation about what New York is and who it's going to make them. And I feel as if when you move here, you're already the person that you're meant to be. And the city forces you to reconcile with that. So I don't think that New York City has shaped my eye in any way, because I've always thought the way that I thought, and I've always sort of seen the things that I've photographed. It's just made me more aware of it because it's abundant here. I don't ever really feel as if people are far removed from my own experience. I feel as if I've gone through enough things to be able to understand maybe not the direct consequences of people, but understand a base premise of people's lives just because of what I've gone through in my life. So I don't really have a hard time feeling as if I'm not able to connect through people through photographs. Even if they have drastically different worldviews than me, I'm still able to understand how they got to that consensus. You know, I think that ultimately it comes down to being very empathetic. I'm a very empathetic person in general, so I feel as if having that empathy and having that real world experience aids me in being able to bridge that gap a little bit. Yeah. Is it fair to say a bit of both? I think that social media has always kind of been a double-edged sword. It's made photography incredibly more accessible. Information is out there now that was never out there before. And you know, if you want a good education in photography, it's more accessible now because of social media. But it's also, on the opposite side of the coin, diluted a lot of the seriousness of photography and the work of photography. Anybody can go out and take a picture with a camera or with your phone and everything like that. But to be a real artist in such a saturated market is incredibly difficult. But each generation of photographic artists have all had their challenges. This is just our generation's challenge, is kind of going through the muddy water, the diluted space that is photography, and creating something compelling enough to be taken seriously. But I'm not going to sit here and say that social media is all bad for photographers. It's given me many opportunities of which I wouldn't have been able to make if it weren't for social media. So I do find it important. I think that it's one of those things that shouldn't go anywhere and is important to the work of emerging youth and emerging artists. I've used this term before. I wrote an article on the death of the aesthetic photograph. And I'd like to say that I think that the aesthetic photograph, while it is sort of a trend right now, you know, the same sort of photographs of cityscapes and the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and cups of cappuccinos and dreamy aesthetic photographs that you see on your feed, is something that it could be deemed as a social media trend. It's still photography, and it's still, you know, that person's point of view. Do I think that a lot of it looks the same? Yes. Do I think it contributes to diluting the water? Yes. But who am I to judge that? You know, not everybody feels the same way about image making that I do, and I try and think about stories whenever I'm photographing. That's all I've ever thought in. So some people just don't think that way, and that's totally fine. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily dislike those types of images. They're very pretty. I just don't think that I have a lot of sense for pretty. I have a sense for realness, I guess. This is another double-edged sword question. I think that brand partnerships in the social media atmosphere and the photography atmosphere is both good and bad, because sometimes I've worked with brands in the past, and they've been very helpful. They've been community building, and they've been insanely fun to do. I've had the opportunity to work with some brands that I've used for years and years before I started doing any of this. But it also loosens your grip on who you are as an artist sometimes. It again sort of muddies the water and dilutes your image of yourself, because you're essentially a salesperson for that brand, which is why I have a very hard time now working with brands and feeling as if it's truly me, which is why I'm much more interested in working with institutions and the brands that do care about photography, and kind of like legacy camera companies and film labs and things of the sort like that. But it's good and bad. I've photographed my fair share of people suffering, of going through something awful. And again, it never comes from a place of mockery or trying to take advantage of anybody. I think that every photograph has three audiences: the person within the frame, the person taking the photograph, and the people who will see it after. And each one has their own sort of stance on what the photograph means to them. I think that a lot of the work that I do that pertains to this sort of topic is ultimately about awareness, because especially here in the city, but it's really a countrywide and even a worldwide problem, is that we deem people lesser than, and we treat people as if they're not real people. And I see it here in the city all the time, the fact that people just walk right past people that are sometimes crying and begging and just looking for a meal or just looking for something to drink, some clothes for on their back, and people just walk right past them. And so, if anything, it feels almost like a responsibility to showcase the fact that people treat others like that. And if my photographs at times can make you stop and question your own sense of self and how you treat others, then I feel as if it's an effective photograph. I know it's a very wishy-washy type of topic to discuss, and the ethics of it have been questioned for years and years and years and years. But my opinion has always been, I don't have the money to help people like that. I'm not rich. I'm not, if I had even $100,000, I would try and do as much as I could, especially compared to that of billionaires who could end it all with a simple snap of a finger. What I can provide is awareness and an opportunity to be seen in a world that constantly shuts you out, that constantly acts as if you're not even a human being. That's how I think about it. The art scene of New York City died decades ago. It's no longer what, a lot of people think that it still may be. If anything, this feels like the tech industry's big boom here in the city, especially as AI evolves. That doesn't mean that there aren't millions of artists here in the city. It's just not sort of geared towards accessibility anymore. There are no hot spots of creativity like there were back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and everybody's been priced out, Also, that sense of community here in the city is just non-existent, like it used to be in past decades. But that doesn't mean that there still aren't many fantastic artists that get their break here in the city. I think that everybody should live here, at least some point in their life, and be open to it. Because especially if you're an artist, this is still, I would say, in this country, the #1 place to be. I think that failure should play a bigger role in an artist's life than success ever should. Because the more that you fail, the more that you understand yourself and the more you understand your mistakes, which will lead to that success. And the best part about being an artist is using your experiences for the betterment of your own work and for the betterment of the people around you. And you can't get there unless you fail. You learn so much more about who you are as an artist when you fail than if you were just told that you were constantly killing it. That's no way to evolve as an artist. And I don't feel as if an artist should ever feel complacent. I'm not interested in complacency. I'm not interested in making complacent stories or images or telling stories that I've already told. So failure should play probably the biggest role in any artist development.